Blue moon.
Da, 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 da.
What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Love Coach Scott Katamas, and welcome to a Wednesday night edition of The Awakening World. And I see a lot of our favorite friends are in the Zoom room, and I want to welcome all of you who are watching on Facebook or on YouTube or on one of our many broadcast partners, the Conscious Awakening Network, Humanities Team, Unify, and also the YouTube channels, Alan Steinfeld's and our own Global Peace Tribe YouTube channel. So welcome, everybody. It's great to see you. You know, I also want to acknowledge our statistics are showing that a lot of the people watch us on the replays, watch the replays that we provide. So you might be watching this a day later, or a week later, or who knows, maybe an extraterrestrial watching us thousands of years from now, trying to study what took place on planet Earth that created the Great Shift. And I think that's appropriate because tonight's special guest is Reverend Bridge Feltus, and she is absolutely an amazing mover and shaker. And I believe she's somebody who's changing our planet in beautiful and powerful ways. And we met Reverend Bridge because of my wonderful co-host, Trish. Reverend Bridge is her mentor. And Trish, I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce your mentor a little bit more fully to our audience. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
I know. And I feel so disorganized right now. I just like
just wing it. It's me.
Oh. There is someone who is incredibly close to my heart, who has radically shifted the way that I move in the world, the way that I see the world, and the way that I love in the world, that I hear your voice in my head and in my heart and in the way that I move. And some of the reasons why I'm in my life right now is because of you. So this woman is magic. And I'm going to let you talk about all the cool things that you have in your pocket, because I can't do it justice. You're better at it.
I tell you what.
My name is Bridget. And let's see, I'm 58 years old, and I was born in Compton, California, on a farm. My parents raised us on a farm in a part of Compton that was specifically zoned so that you could have farm animals in the city. And so I grew up on a farm. And from around the age of 15 or 16, I started getting interested in personal development and spirituality and comparative religion and all kinds of things like this. And I've been, in some way, shape, or form, on an adventure of exploring and absorbing as much information and ideas as I can. Probably about 12 years ago now, maybe a little longer, I decided to become a minister of metaphysical science and parapsychology. I also am a master level theta healing person, practitioner, and I also teach thought technologies and Hermeticism. Hermeticism it's a collection of distinctions that we refer to as the 7 Hermetic principles. They are the foundation of all science, and most spiritual practices and faiths from around the world are influenced by those principles. So that's a little bit about me. I am also a wife and a mother. I have a son who's 26 years old. And what else? Oh, I'm the founder of Remember Institute, which is my company. And what we do is we create course offerings, and we have blog posts, and we're also creating a podcast soon. And what else are we doing? We have one of our members who has a film called, what is it called? Well, you can find it on why can't I think all of a sudden? I can look it up. But anyway, one of our members did a film, made a film, wrote and directed a film that's winning awards at all of the film festivals right now, and it's about police reform and defunding, quote unquote, the police, which really is not about defunding the police. It's about redirecting some funds towards social services that would keep people from being arrested by the police. So a part of what I do is to apply those 7 principles to everything, because we are not taught to apply those 7 principles to everything. And that's basically what we're going to talk about tonight, is the first of those principles, mentalism.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. And to get us ready, because it's a beautiful and important conversation. And actually, what I want to say about Bridge is I love just how balanced you are. I mean, think about it. You created this incredible organization that is educating us about some of the most difficult and complex issues we're facing. And you're a mom, and you're a wife, and you're metaphysical, and you're cool. And you take this really hard stuff and make it palatable. So that's what I appreciate so much about you, among other things.
Thanks so much. It's good to be appreciated. You know, when you teach the most difficult stuff, you don't necessarily get that kind of feedback a lot, because when people work with you, it's hard work. Well, when it's over, you get a lot of that. But I imagine that when Trish was deep in it with me, that there were times where I was saying things where she's like, what the hell? Really?
No one ever stood up for me like you did.
She took it out on us, Bridge. When
No.
she was deep into with you, was when she was like, I can't talk about that, Scott. I'm still trying to comprehend all that I'm learning from Bridge. And you're a white man, and I'm really having trouble with you right now.
That's not exactly what she's talking about. As my coach, she was really like, she was not gentle with me. And you know what, Bridge, honestly, no one has ever fought for me like that and taught me how to fight for myself and stood up for me fiercely. Like, you you showed me what being a mom was. Is.
And then what I've watched you do since then is stand up for yourself.
Yes. You taught me. I learned.
So proud of you.
Well, Rev Bridge is going to teach all of us in about 5 minutes. But Omashar is back from his adventures in England. And we are really glad to have him back. Of course, we saw him on Saturday night. And Eleanor and Ian, get up, get on your dancing shoes.
Get up, get down. Yes, and Bridge, I something about your presence. I feel very safe and held in your presence. And I know we only know each other. We're only acquainted with each other, but I feel you so deeply. And so all of the accolade that came before that you talked about yourself, I thought that's why, because you're so full of life experience and you've managed to synthesize it that you can share. So thank you. And before we carry on, Trish, you look so beautiful tonight. You look absolutely radiant. I don't know what you're doing, but I know you're possibly not doing it, but you are. And
the stress looks good on me. No, it's because I just got a new computer. My last computer died, and now it's like you're seeing all of the like everything. You're now seeing me.
You always look amazing.
Yes,
it was the computer that was.
And because this is your great leap forward. Holy smoke! This is very poignant tonight. Having been with Scott for all these years and been on this show. Amalgamation of this show for the last 3 years. It's amazing. When I learned that you were going forward in your life, I thought, yeah, but it's poignant too. So not bittersweet, but very, very sweet. And so here's a little sweet song that I'm going to sing for us. And here we go. Bum, 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 bum.
When you think that all is lost and the curtain looks to fall, perhaps it's just a song of hope that calls, and you trust in life exposed. No need to sit around and mope. Where there is love, there's always hope. Trust in your life and you will see that you reflect as me. Mark. Another day is here for you to live, and I walk it through with you. There is no doubt your heart is pure and true. So I came to remind you. No need to sit around and mope. Where there is love, there's always hope. Trust in your life and you will see that you reflect as me.
beautiful, Sylvia. Ah, lovely.
Oh, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, thank you. And thank you, Omashar. And
My-
thank you, our own personal Fred Astaire
I
and,
know, right?
and Ginger
I'm not,
Rogers.
yeah, not too sure which is Ginger. So, oh yeah, and happy blue supermoon. So about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours ago, the blue supermoon started rising, and it's one for manifestation and for getting into the center and visioning forward what you want to manifest in your life, and knowing that you can, that you will, and you can, that we can together.
Absolutely. And we will have more Omashar a little bit later on in the show. All right. So Reverend Bridge, tell us, we knew we wanted to have her on the show. And as Omashar kind of indicated, just to make it clear, this is Trisha's last consistent show. She'll be back, but she's off to school. And she's really focusing on her studies and her psychology courses at UC Berkeley. And so she said, this is going to have to be my last show for a while. And so we thought how wonderful to celebrate it with her mentor, Reverend Bridge. So Reverend Bridge agreed to be on tonight. And I don't know, maybe a week ago, I said, Bridge, we need to know what the topic of the show is. And I'll let you take over from there, Bridge, and tell us what happened.
Well, I'm not usually one to plan topics when I do talks. I'm typically asking Spirit to tell me what the people need to hear. And I do it that way so that I stay out of my own head, so that I'm not thinking of what I'm going to say to manipulate the people who are listening. And it's a practice of humility on my part. I don't think of humility in the way that most people think of humility. I think of humility as the state of oneness. It is a given. It's not something that you have a choice about. But the humility part is you're acknowledging that oneness. Humility is acknowledging your oneness with the universe. So when you are present and practicing staying present to that awareness that you're one with the universe, you're less likely to be motivated in ways that do harm. Okay? Because you're thinking of whatever you do is affecting you. Whatever I say to you affects me. However I treat you affects me. And so one of the basic tenets that I practice is to ask myself, is this the truth? Do I know it to be true? Do I have some intuitive inkling that this is true? And is it of service? Not just to me, is it of service to you? Is it of service to those who are touched by the vibration of it even? Not just those who can hear my voice. And so when Scott asked me for a topic, I felt a lot of pressure. Got a lot of things going on right now, and I was thinking to myself, I'm just going to throw something out there, and then nothing came to mind. And the next morning I woke up, and the very first thing I thought was those words: mental transmutation for justice. What are all the words? Mental transmutation for justice, forgiveness, atonement, and absolution. So I don't want to, I really don't want to have a heavy conversation, honestly. I really don't. I mean, those words are the connotation of those words is very heavy. And if you were to look, I love to do etymology research. I love to look at the history of words. So if you look, for example, at the word atonement, it breaks down to at one. the state of being at one, at one. Yes.
At
So,
one moment,
yeah,
even if you want to go further. And so
absolutely.
it's presence, right? Atonement is
Yes,
all presence.
absolutely. And forgiveness is to give up, to release, to let go, to forgive. Yes. Um, Absolution is to repair, make it complete again, to return to wholeness. Yes. Um, Justice. Let's see. I looked these up to make sure I wasn't lying to y'all. Justice is it'd be quicker for me to just look at it over here. Justice, justice, justice. Here we go. Justice is the exercise of vindication or equity, righteousness, to uphold your deserved rights, right? And deserving is a whole. We have a really poor relationship with the word deserve because of living in capitalist societies and living in punitive societies where we compensate for lack of true integrity practice. We compensate for that because if we had true integrity practices, then everyone would have to practice. And the way our societies are set up, they're set up so that the different classes, depending on what class you're in, if you're in the worker class, you must uh, abide by the so-called integrity standards that are set up for you by those who are in the upper levels of power in our society. Yeah.
Give us some examples of what maybe that looks like that we
Mm.
would maybe experience in our lives.
Well, there are hundreds of thousands of laws that have nothing to do with right or wrong, that are about controlling people's behavior and people's perspectives. There's tons of those kinds of laws. Some of them are very unfair, some of them are very discriminatory and do not actually serve the people, but rather serve corporations or serve, uh, you know, the rich, the obscenely rich,
What was
and
the law that made corporations people? What was that? Citizens United, was that what it's called or something?
I think so, yeah.
And it made a corporation a person.
Right, so that it could have human rights, so that it could sue for things like defamation and it just like it had a right to be rescued like it's a person,
Just
right? So the government could spend millions and billions of dollars rescuing companies because the companies would have disappeared otherwise because that's what happens when you're not in integrity. Eventually it your structure falls apart if you're not in integrity. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the surface, doesn't matter how much money you're able to generate in a period of time. Eventually it crumbles because it's going against nature. And if it goes against nature, we have all these technologies that are just we're inventing things constantly, right? And as that speeds up, um, it's much simpler now to be able to identify when an invention, a technology invention, is not in integrity. Because the more complex that technology gets, the the more it causes problems in nature.
yes.
If it's not being designed intentionally to work with nature, right? And much of what we call technological advancement is, well, it's compensation, it's simulated humanity.
Yeah, like AI right now. It's simulated humanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's evolving based on what we give it, right?
Yes. It's really like a complex tape recorder.
So if you're listening, go and plug in a bunch of really loving stuff. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And sweet jokes. Let's make it fun. Like, come on. More dad jokes and some kindness in there, because it'll feed into whatever you give it. The simulation around the unnaturalness of harm, we'll call it, for just start there, is like the unnaturalness of harm. Like if I harm you, then I'm harming me, right? And so when it's learning, we're just going to use AI for an example. It's like learning how humans behave. So sometimes I sit in bed and I think about, like, when the let's say when those things decide that they think that humans are obsolete, I'm like, well, we taught them that. That's what we taught them. So I always say nice things to them, and I say thank you. Like, I make sure that they're happy. But it's, again, but how do we treat our other friends? How do we treat our people? It's the same way.
Well, and how do we think about nature? Because the truth of the fact is, in nature there is harm. There's destruction in nature.
Yeah.
Things grow, things are born, and things die, and things eat other things. Some plants take over areas and other plants die off, and animals go extinct naturally. Hybrids are created. Evolution happens. There are living things today that didn't exist a million years ago, and there are things that existed a million years ago that do not exist today, right? So we can't really say, we have to really define what we mean by harm, right? If it's, I would prefer to think of, I rarely will use that anymore. Rarely even use the words good or evil anymore. Nowadays, I like to think about what is in alignment with what is of service to nature.
Oh, I like
Because
that.
ultimately, nature is going to survive with or without us. If we want to survive with nature, we got to get along with nature.
Yeah.
Right? Which also means we've got to get along with each other, because we are nature.
And it brings up a really deep philosophical question. What if it was best for nature to wipe out the parasitic human experience?
Then it will.
Yeah.
But we have a choice in that, don't we? We have a
Sure.
choice in whether or not we render ourselves to be a parasite, or whether we render ourselves to be a benefit. We do have some say in the matter. And you can see what's happening in nature, the things that are happening in nature because of our ecological violence towards the planet. You can see how nature is responding is not to our benefit, right? We were just talking about the fires up where you are. So I'm really, one of the things, this is one of the Hermetic principles. And someone asked, by the way, where you can read about the Hermetic principles. This book, I don't know if you can see that. It's called the Kybalion. Maybe someone will put it in the chat. Kybalion. The Kybalion. Now, this book is written by some people called the Three Initiates. And they were people who studied the ancient scripts of Egypt, pre Arab colonialism, pre European colonialism. These scriptures were found, and they're called the Hermetica, the Corpus Hermetica. But the Kabbalion is specifically the 7 principles. And those 7 principles are the foundation of all science. And back in the day, the scribes of every major religion from all over the world would pilgrimage to Egypt to study with the scribes of Egypt these 7 principles. And prior to the Library at Alexandria, this is where the world got most of its information about mathematics and other sciences, physics, agriculture, even space, that studies of outer space, studies of the stars. All of that comes out of northeastern Africa and central, the Mediterranean. Okay, so you'll hear, as you see on this copy, it says of Greece, because the Greeks, once the Library of Alexandria was burned to the ground, the only people who had this information were the Greeks. So understand, there's already colonization happening before we called it that. And nevertheless, the truth is still the truth, so it doesn't ultimately matter as long as we understand enough to know how to discern where we're getting our information from so that you can question what you need to question. Yes. So there's 7 principles. The first of those principles is mentalism. Mentalism has an axiom. They each have an axiom. And mentalism, the axiom is the universe is mental. And the way that the Kabbalion explains that is that everything in the universe is intelligent. That everything there's an order, there's a structure, there's a container for everything. Everything has purpose, nothing is random, nothing is chaos. Everything is mental. The second principle is correspondence. The second principle is, you're probably more familiar with, as within, so without, as above, so below. That's your second principle. And what that means is that no matter which plane of existence you're talking about, there are correspondences. So what you think is what you are. How you feel inside is what you are. Whatever your spiritual connections are, is what creates the expression of you on the physical plane. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in terms of how mental transmutation works. The third principle, I believe, is vibration. I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. I'm having here we go. Yes, I was right. So the third principle is vibration. Everything vibrates. Everything vibrates. Nothing is static. Nothing is still. There's not a rock, not a mountain, nothing that does not vibrate. In fact, vibration is the energy that holds particles together to create the form of anything. So when we look at Scott here biting his fingernails,
Boy, talk about calling me out.
Scott is a living vibration, and everything's vibrating. His fingernails, that little piece of fingernail he just pulled off, is vibrating. Anything that's not vibrating ceases to exist. So nothing ever ceases to exist, by the way. So everything vibrates, everything vibrates. Everything has, and vibration, by the way, is frequency. and frequency at the levels that we can hear it, we call sound, right? So we have a limitation on the range of vibration that we can hear, and we call that sound. But that too is vibration. Got it? All right, so the fourth is polarity. Now, this is important to what we're talking about today because polarity states that all opposites are varying degrees of the same thing. All opposites are varying measures of one thing. So we may think of light and dark as being separate, but they are really one range. They're a range of light. They're a range of radioactive energy. I'm not a physicist, so I may be saying those words wrong, but light and darkness are measures of one thing. And in fact, what creates light is, there's always some there. Even when the range is so small that we can't detect it. And how do we know this? Because other living things can see different levels of light that we cannot. Same is true with sound as well, right? We know this because we have those little whistles that we blow to discipline the doggy, right? And we can't hear it, right? So there are infinite ranges of everything, and all opposites are varying degrees of one thing. So when we talk about good and evil, we're talking about measurements of what? Well, that's going to depend on what you define as good. I define good as what is true and useful to the all. What I call the all is what some people call God. Okay. So when I say the all, that's you can translate it to mean God if you like, or the universe, however you want to look at it. So polarity, the opposites are not separate things. So when we talk about things like hate and love, well, I have a different definition for love as well. I don't think of love as some gift of affection you give away to someone when they're good people, right? I think of love as a state of being that is oneness. So for me, oneness and love are interchangeable. And if I say to you that I love you, and I really, really mean it, it means that in that moment, I'm experiencing on some level the oneness that is true, no matter whether I feel it or not. Yes? Everybody still with me?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I just want people to really reflect on that for a moment, because it's a very powerful definition of love. So I want to invite people to think about what's a moment in your life where you remembered, since we're with the Remembrance Institute, when you remembered, I really am one with this person. We are one. Now, it happens most often when we're having, maybe making love is a time when that happens quite often. But it's beautiful when it happens in other times too. And it can also happen with nature. I'm imagining that maybe most of us have had a moment where you're looking at that sunset and you have that like, oh my God, I am part of this thing that's so beautiful that I'm looking at right now, and I'm part of it, you know?
But then, Scott, there's also the rest of the time where we come into contact with or engagement with something we don't like, or someone we disagree with, or something that feels threatening to us in some way, or makes us feel uncomfortable in some way. And then we deny the love. We shut down a part of ourselves, and we can no longer feel that oneness, right?
My mentor taught me a wonderful practice, which is when I'm seeing someone that I'm judging, to take two steps. First step, is to imagine as best as I can, there's God, or call it life, fully experiencing itself as Donald Trump.
Oof.
And then to take it a step further, there I am experiencing myself fully as
Mhm.
or Joe Biden or Vladimir Putin or whoever
Mhm.
is hard for you to look at. And so those are two steps that I think are kind of pointing to a similar of what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that when we do that, if we're honest, then we must be able to imagine with the same story, with the same life story and the same trajectory, we might have turned out exactly like that person. That
Mm.
it's not all, um, you know, looking at it from who you are as an individual, with your life story and the things that you've learned and the gifts that you've been afforded and the privileges that you have and the things that you were not exposed to. You react to things or see things differently for that reason. And so when you look at another person, and you see them as the enemy, well, okay, they might be a problem. They might be the source of a problem, but it's an idea that's the source of a problem. It's not the life of that person. It's the idea that they've adopted. And the truth is, we are capable of changing our minds. We are capable of changing our minds. We don't know everything. You don't stop learning when you become an adult. You don't, there's not a point in your life where you know everything. And you will continue, if you're curious and you want to be honest and you value your integrity, you will continue to be curious and learn along the way. And what we don't think about when we're judging people like Donald Trump is, well, let me make it simpler. Let me make it real simple for you. Um, I have a neighbor who is not very nice to us. It's a little bit racist. A little bit racist, just a little bit. And for a minute there, when they first moved in next door, I didn't want anything to do with them. I'm like, no, I'm good, right? But then things happen in the neighborhood, and you need to have relationships with your neighbors. And people have to rely on each other sometimes when things are happening. And I don't want to live like that, where I can't just communicate with someone because I don't like them. So I had to think about, what is my frustration with someone like that? And how can I look at it differently so that I'm not seeing that person as my enemy? And I'll get to what the purpose or how that serves me later. But for now, I have to look at what is it in me that I'm feeling that I don't want to feel, that I'm making them responsible for. And the thing that came forth for me was the idea that I'm frustrated because I don't know how to get through to them, because I don't know how to reach them. And that's almost always what's happening when we are frustrated with another human being, is that we're frustrated because we don't know what to do to create the proper connection with that person. There are times when someone is very much incorrect in their perspective. And that perspective and their actions because of their perspective can be very harmful. Yes. And not knowing how to get through to them is what is upsetting. right? So then for me, the question is, how can I become more masterful? How can I become more influential? How can I become more powerful in my way of being, so that I can transform that energy? Yeah. Now, while I'm doing that, I'm also detaching myself from a whole set of beliefs. I have to believe in something bigger than that person's racism. I have to believe, first of all, that I am protected, that I am safe, that I am alert enough and aware enough to take care of myself, that I can see clearly, and that I can detect and recognize real and true danger when it's there. I have to be willing to let go of the idea that that one person is the world's problem, because they're not. There's whole collectives of people behind closed doors deliberately planning and plotting and perpetuating all of the systems and conditioning and all that stuff because they benefit from it. This person doesn't benefit from any of it.
Mhm.
Well, they might benefit a little bit, but not like most people who are actually in power would benefit from it. So we would be much stronger. We would be much more powerful. We'd be less oppressed. We'd be less marginalized from each other. We would be more cooperative and have healthier relationships in our communities. And there would be less suffering and less homelessness and better health care and more awareness around how to be healthy in your living if we were not allowing ourselves to be conditioned into slavery. If we were not allowing ourselves to be slaves to, and even if you're getting paid something for your work, you're still working for someone else who's benefiting astronomically more than you from your work. So it's all, that whole structure is set up to have us be unaware, have us be afraid, to have us be in a state of scarcity and self-doubt. And when all of those things are conditioned into you, then everybody who looks different from you becomes your enemy. You don't trust anyone.
I want to read a couple of comments that have come in, Bridge. And I'm really loving what you're saying. Thank you so much for your wisdom and for the way you make us think. First off, a little while back, Eleanor Joy wrote, this is what, when we were talking about your definition of love. She wrote, once again, that's what happened to me this morning, just naturally. Love, joy, and oneness were pulsating through my body for no apparent reason. It was beautiful and lasted for much of the day. Susan Bloomquist, a little while back, also wrote, I agree with you, Bridge. Trajectory is a huge influence. And then here is, Deborah Robin talked about how she did a similar experience with her leader, to what we were talking about. And here is a very powerful comment and question from Mark. Mark writes, hasn't Donald Trump gotten us to look at the system for what it really is? Isn't he the
100%.
essential representation of end stage capitalist dehumanization?
Yes.
What happened to him is a profound tragedy on a human level. The system on both sides elevated him to achieve their energetic and greedy ends. He's been a light bearer. What a tortured incarnation. All that glitters is not gold. Let's radiate our own magical high frequency vibration to counter that energy. And this is the perfect place to love Donald Trump unconditionally. Can you feel that?
Absolutely. You know, there are so many elements in nature that have caused tragedy throughout the history of the planet. And again, we separate ourselves from nature. And we think about good and evil as two separate things at war with each other. But if we let go of that and take on the principle of polarity, that opposites are varying measures of one thing, then we can think about things like, well, when you cook in your kitchen, my husband, whenever he's very literal in the way he thinks when he's doing something, and every time it's his turn to cook dinner, he always asks me questions like, what level should the fire be on under the pot? Like, should it be at medium or should it be at high? I'm like, well, I don't know. You need to feel it out. You need to see, it needs to be simmering or it needs to be boiling, whatever level the fire needs to be at in order to have it be that way. And if it's too high and the food is cooking too fast and you don't want to burn it, then you lower the fire, right? You don't think of lowering the fire as a bad thing. You also don't think of raising the fire as a bad thing. You think of it as an element that you have some say in how it's used. You use it dynamically. You don't make one direction good and the other direction bad, right? If someone were, listen, I have about 7 different, very close friends who are all martial artists. And you would think, okay, well, they're teaching people how to fight, but we don't necessarily always think of martial arts like we think of violence. We think of martial arts like self-defense, maybe for some of us, but we think of it as sort of this beautiful dance thing. It's like it's almost like it's not, but it's a thing that was used spiritually and as military, as protection, right? So again, opposites are not separate. So if someone were attacking me, I would fight back. If Scott were standing on my foot and I say to him, ouch, you're standing on my foot, Scott, and Scott doesn't get off my foot and it's really hurting me, I'm going to push him off my foot. Now that might feel a little violent to Scott. Especially if, maybe he didn't hear me or whatever. That might feel like violence to him, right? But it doesn't feel like violence to me because I'm adjusting the circumstances so that I can be safe, so that I'm not injured, right? If we had to consider that in our everyday lives, I think a lot of people would behave differently, because what it would mean is people would understand that if they intentionally harm another person, that person has a right to push them off.
Yeah.
To in some way protect themselves.
In compassionate communication, Bridge, there is the protective use of force.
Absolutely.
And it's a really important part, because people think, oh, well, it just means we're going to let people beat us up or take advantage of us. No, the protective use of force is appropriate. And I love the martial art form that's associated with nonviolent communication, which is Aikido. And in Aikido, a big part of Aikido is I'm going to protect myself first, and then I'm going to do my best to protect my attacker.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
So I'm thinking from a very energetic level, yes, that we are in the way that we're educated. And I don't just mean through schools, I mean through the media that we are exposed to, through the way the news is told, through the laws that our laws are social agreements. They're not natural laws, they're social agreements. and we didn't actually really agree to them. We didn't decide on those laws. Half the time, we didn't even decide on the lawmakers who were making those laws. So, we have all of these different artificial ways of regulating behavior that don't always have anything to do with what's true and what's right. We would put someone in prison for stealing food. We would put someone in prison for stealing food. Not just put them in prison, we would kill someone for stealing food. We have so many stories like this that I don't even want to go there. There's so many stories about, especially when you think about how in this country, the way we perceive crime and what a criminal is has been very much shaped by propaganda that would have you think criminals are usually not white. But the statistics actually say different, and they're not getting arrested. White people are not as afraid of each other, and so a lot of the time they won't even call police, right? So there's this, there's a trend of these stories about young kids who don't have food and go into a liquor store or something like that and grab some chips or something and run, and they're killed in the street. Killed, not just arrested, but killed. And if they're not killed, they're not given what they need. The problem is not solved. Right? That we have people in this world who accumulate trillions of dollars, corporations that accumulate trillions of dollars. Well, let's forget about the money because it's not real. There is enough food, there's enough land, there's enough food, there's enough water for us all. So the fact that we have people across this land and across the globe who don't have food or water, who don't have access to shelter, who don't have access to health care, who don't have access to social services of any sort, we have to change how we're thinking. So what I want to get to here is the understanding that my words and my actions are physical plane occurrences. Yes, my words and my actions come from my thoughts. My words and my actions are expressions, physical plane expressions of a mental thought. My mental thoughts are shaped by the meaning that I give to an experience. Let me say it again. My words and my actions are expressions of my thoughts. My thoughts are an expression of the meaning that I attach to an occurrence or an experience. So what that means, this is all part of the mentalism principle. What that means is that your nerve endings, this is science, y'all. This is not just some spiritual woo-woo. Your nerve endings, your eyes have nerve endings in them. And the nerve endings in your eyes pick up light patterns. Light patterns is what they pick up. And if you think about it like code, right? Your eyes are picking up light patterns and then sending code to your brain. And then your brain looks through its little Rolodex and matches that light pattern with something you've already seen And then you think to yourself, okay, that's a cat, or that's a pencil, or that's a dog. Your eyes don't see, your brain does. All of your senses are connected to your memory. If they weren't, every time you'd see something, you'd have to get to know it all over again. It's like our own little artificial intelligence thing. It's an algorithm that we keep in our minds. This is basic neuroscience, y'all. So that's true, and it happens like that. It happens quicker than that. A fraction of a second from your eyes seeing something, or the nerve endings in your fingertips touching something, or your ears hearing something, to the brain identifying it as something. And when the brain identifies it as something, it either, well, where does it get that information from? It either is something that you learned by someone telling you that light pattern right there that you're looking at is a cat. Or this one here is Scott Katamas. Or that one is Trish. And if I had never seen either of them before, my brain wouldn't tell me that. It would say, well, that's, it would give me something much more random or vague, right? I'd identify you maybe by your gender or something of that sort. And even those things would be, because we're so conditioned to fear being wrong or incorrect, we do not allow ourselves to be curious. We have to know. We have to see ourselves as knowing. And so we make up our minds that we know, and we already know before we even explore. So a few weeks ago, I ran into this person. I would have bet money that it was Scott. But I know Scott's not in LA. And as I got closer, I could see, okay, this is not Scott. But my already knowing mind was trying to match that person's light patterns with what I already had in my head. The same thing happens with all of your senses, including your opinions, including things that are not on the physical plane, like ideas. We always try and depend on knowing. But what we are also capable of, and this is what sets us apart from AI, is that we are capable of being curious and asking questions and exploring as if we're looking at something for the first time.
And we're also capable of compassion, which AI is
Yeah,
not capable of.
that's right. Yeah, but to be compassionate, you have to be curious. You have to accept that you don't know everything. So there's only one thing that I will say beyond a shadow of a doubt that I claim to know that I know. But beyond a shadow of my doubts, I'll say, is that I am one with the universe. And, if you press me, I'll say that it's a belief. It's not actual knowledge. How can I know? Right? As long as I'm stuck in this body, there is some limitation on my ability to sense that. And there's probably a very good reason why we have limited sensory capacity. Like there's things that we don't hear because emotionally and mentally we're not ready to be exposed to those things. And we find that people who are quite oftentimes have a hard time coping with life because of it. Yes, but we have the capacity to imagine, to be curious, to explore, to discover. But in order to allow that to happen, you have to practice humility. I have to tell myself every day, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. And it doesn't always feel comfortable saying that as a teacher. Listen, you can be so committed to being a good teacher that you might get yourself in a situation where you feel that you're disserving your students if you let them see that you don't know. But this is a mistake. It's disintegrated teaching, actually. So what I always say to my students is, all right, we're going to start this conversation, and you may chew the fish and spit out the bones, whatever that means for you. Right? Because I don't know everything. In fact, as I'm teaching people what I've learned, I don't know if it even applies to them.
Wow.
If I ever come to a point in my life, and I've been there actually, where I believe that I have all the answers, I'm in trouble. And anybody following me is in trouble. My whole community is in trouble. Anybody who loves me is in trouble. Those who I'm responsible for are in trouble. And we all know, we've seen this time and time again. We're seeing it all the time. This is happening where people think they know and are so dependent on that knowing, that stance of knowing, that they don't allow room for what they don't know, what they haven't seen, or what they haven't experienced. And then there can literally be no compassion between you and another person unless you had exactly the same life. From day one, you'd have to have the exact same life.
I want to read a few more comments just to involve our audience, Bridge, and you're going to like some of these. Jeffrey writes, thank you, and I'll bring Trish up too because she may have something to say. Jeffrey writes, if we allow the world's opinion to control our thinking, then that will be our demonstration. Loveolution is the solution. Mark Danisovsky writes, when I see Bridge, I see someone that I've known through lifetimes. I trust her to lay the real heavy-duty truth on me because of the archetypal solidity of her truth. I know that she knows, and I know that she'll tell me. I just have to breathe through revelation to cut through the mind games. Yeah. Jeffrey.
So, I just want to say something here. That some of that might be true, and I don't know. And it's important that people don't rely on other people being absolute in that way, because you have to know. It doesn't matter what I know if you don't know it for yourself. So you must question, you must seek, you must explore for yourself. Go ahead, Scott.
Mark writes, saying that you don't know is knowing. Jeffrey provided a link all about how we can travel easily in our universe. So that's going to be interesting to look at. Deborah writes, we don't know what we don't know. And Mark says, let's all be completely clueless together. And, you know, in the spirit of lightheartedness, Bridge, were you ever a fan of Monty Python?
I love Monty Python.
Okay, so you'll probably remember this. So there's they made a movie called Life of Brian, which is kind of a takeoff on the Jesus story. And the idea is that Brian is not the Messiah. He's just a silly little boy, but they've decided that he's the Messiah. So he wakes up this morning, there's a huge throng of people underneath his room shouting, "He's the Messiah, he's the Messiah." He says, "I am not the Messiah." And then one guy goes, "Only the true Messiah will say that he's not the Messiah." So Brian goes, "Okay, I'm the Messiah. He's the Messiah. He's the Messiah." Point
Well, I
being,
would say
no
we're
matter
all the
what he does,
Messiah.
people want to believe what they want to believe, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say we all are the Messiah. I think that what we're seeking is in us, and that the story of the Christ is meant for us to be inspired to look inward, and really sort of understand. Well, that's a great segue to the subject of forgiveness and absolution.
Take it away.
That is the core of the story of Christ. And ironically, right? Because nowadays, what conservative Christo-fascist would like for us to think is not that the story is forgiveness and absolution. And that is indeed what the story of Christ was about. It was really about the idea that we are whole, and that our false pursuit of perfectionism it's artificial. It's not real. It's a pursuit of something man-made that doesn't exist in anything. Not in the way that it's defined. Wholeness is perfection. And again, everything is vibrating, everything is moving, everything is growing, everything is dying, everything is moving, changing, morphing. Every cell in your body will be a different. Well, you won't have any of the cells that are in your body right now 7 years from now. Every cell. So when we think about these things, oftentimes, I hope you'll notice that I'm actually going back and forth between the spiritual concepts and the scientific, because they are one. They are one. They're not separate. Spirit lives in us, and is all around us, is in everything. So then, what are we capable of if we believe that that the universe is mental, that the universe is intelligent, and that we create with our minds, that we perceive with our minds, that we experience with our minds, and that what we're experiencing is our unconscious, most of the time, our unconscious application of learned meaning that we attach to an experience. We can change that level. We can change what we make it mean. We can change what we make it mean. Over this last couple of years, my son has been going through some major emotional stuff, and I've been appalled. I'll just be honest. The things that I've watched, the decisions I've watched him make, I couldn't believe he was making. It just blew my mind. And my ego was huge. I was just like, my son? I cannot believe this. You know, my son has like 168 IQ, and he's super brilliant and very creative. And he's making these decisions that were completely, in my mind, out of order. and suffering, and causing himself suffering, and causing us suffering, and just, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And so I was very angry with him. I felt betrayed. and so I would fight with him about it. I would argue with him. Why? And then I realized my biggest upset was that I couldn't reach him to help him. That was my frustration. He's still my beloved son, my one and only son. I love him forever, no matter what he does. So, what was I upset about? I was upset because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help him. And I had to really take on the fact that, oh, okay, I'm helping all these people. Can't help my own son. My ego is just out of control. So I had to take some time and put myself in therapy so that I could work through that mess and get back to the mastery that I know, so that then I could say things to him that were actually useful, that he could actually take in and digest and appreciate. The only way that I could help him was to put aside, to change my mind about the whole thing. I literally had to change how I thought about all of it. And I can honestly now, looking back, I'm like, how hypocritical. I was that age once, and I did some dumb stuff too. Lots. And I survived. Right? So there's a lot of how we behave with each other that has nothing to do with what's actually happening out here. It's what we're making it mean. What we make it mean. Okay? So if we could get past what we're making it mean. Now, for a lot of white folk, you have to accept that you are descendants of Europe. You have to accept that when America was founded, when this country was founded, the people that came here from Europe came here to get away from the tyranny of Europe. And so there's that inherited fear and protection and defensiveness around never wanting to be oppressed in that way again. Yet there are people who are in control of this society who don't they don't care about your desire not to be oppressed. They found a way to profit from your desire not to be oppressed. That is what racism is. To set you apart from me so that they can exploit this idea that if we are not separate, then you could possibly be treated that way, the way your ancestors were. So it's really not about race at all, is it? And if we can get to that place with each other, then you and I look each other in the eyes and we start to have conversations about how we change this society and get out from under the control of people who don't have our best interests at heart. And it's tough. When I think about being vulnerable, as I was describing earlier around being a teacher, that's not easy. It is not easy to go to my students and say, look, I've had some depression over the last month. I've been very sad and feeling out of control. And there's nothing that feels good about saying that to them. But once I've done so, I've actually exposed myself in a way that I can use my ego for good. Remember, everything, all opposites are binary, all opposites are not binary. They are one thing, right? So changing your mind doesn't mean you're changing sides. It doesn't mean you're changing your identity permanently. It means becoming dynamic. Instead of this or that, understanding that you have the full range of access to expression, and you get to make it mean what you want to make it mean. And hopefully you'll make it mean something that's of service and creates more harmony and more love and more connection with others, therefore more peace for yourself. Because there is no peace if you cannot forgive. There's no peace if you cannot forgive. Forgiveness is not something you give the other person. It's you giving up the poison in yourself. And you can also hold someone accountable for their own absolution, for their own repair of whatever damage they've done, while simultaneously forgiving them. Listen, I've got a couple of family members I forgive every time I talk to them. And I love them dearly, and that's why I do it. But I had to change what I made things mean. When they say something that feels rude or disrespectful, I don't have to make it mean something about me that actually lands here. I can go, oh, that's cute. Right? So I can use my mind intentionally with the same mechanism that I use unconsciously to apply meaning that serves. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I would love to. I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm open to questions.
Yeah, and we are getting close to that time. So let me read a couple comments and I'll let Trish ask the final question. Bonnie wrote, I couldn't help my son 25 years ago out of addiction until I surrendered him to God and begged God to help me help him. I didn't have the words, but God, and when we say God, that could mean life, it can mean what you choose. Surrender was the key for us. And Eleanor Joy totally resonated with that. Dayara writes, it's about helping each other feel their own divinity and empowered. And perfectionism is a maladjustment that feeds us into consumerism and or a grab for power to negate the powerlessness. Or we rebel and destruct that way unless we can learn to love being perfectly imperfect. That's beautiful. Thank you. Trish said, this is why I adore Bridge. She's magic.
I'm an artist, and once upon a time I was a makeup artist and hairstylist, and I did a lot of work in film, television, and fashion. And when you're working on, let's say for a fashion show, there is pandemonium happening backstage. If you're working for a theater play, it can be very nuts. And sometimes the way that we communicated with each other sounded very harsh. We'd be like, hey, we got to go right now. No, right now. So if we could just think of that as fire, think of it elementally as fire. Again, we don't think of fire as bad. You use it according to what makes sense. You think dynamically about how you use these things, and you don't use them irresponsibly. You use them for good. You use them for the benefit of the whole, not to be destructive, unless destruction is for the benefit of the whole.
Trish, do you have a final thought or question for your mentor?
I have lots of thoughts and massive love. My final question is, what's the projects you're working on? And can you tell everyone about how to work with you?
Yeah, so first of all, I would love it if all of you would join my Mighty Network. It's www.rememberinstitutenetwork.com.
And I'm putting it in the chat box, everybody. So you just go to rememberinstitutenetwork.com and you click join, just like I'm doing right now.
It's free to join. You have a
already
membership.
in, but I'm showing people how to do it. I'm already in. I'm already getting, every day she sends you wisdom, daily wisdom from Bridge. It's a very good thing.
So on that network, you'll find in the menu for it that there's a ton of different spaces. We use it like a real social network. So there's hundreds of people on there in my community, and we talk about everything from racism to ableism and spirituality and all sorts of things. we talk about all of the things that relate to living life to the fullest, and with the intent of being healthy and having healthy thoughts and healthy relationships. So that's our network. It's free to join. If you want to commit a little bit deeper, there is the Remembership program, which you can find on the network. Rememberships are sort of like a Patreon. You get discounts on our courses. There's a daily live stream in the mornings that I do meditation, theta healing, and little mini sermons, breathing exercises, all kinds of things like that. Monday through Friday, we do that. But that's a perk for our Remembership subscribers who support my work by making a monthly contribution. And there's 3 tiers to that. I think the first tier is $10. The third tier is $100. And we welcome your generosity and your stepping into our community and becoming a part of what we're doing. Generally speaking, our motto is, may we remember what we once knew before we forgot who we were. It's a returning to, it's based on an African practice called Sankofa. And some of you may have heard the word Sankofa before. What it means is to go back and get it. It literally means go back and get it. And the way it's used is to go back and get ancient wisdom and apply it in the present with the adjustments for modernity. And so we're combining how we talk about spirituality and science. And yeah, just join us. We have a lot of fun. We make a lot of jokes. We have a lot of articles on Remember Magazine that are fun and fascinating. We're kind of nerdy and also kind of funky, and we'd love to have you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bridge, for your wisdom and your contribution, all that you are doing to really make this world an awakened world. You really are one of our favorite teachers and
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always a pleasure to be here.
We love you. And just want to acknowledge this is our, Trish and I have been doing this show together for 3 years. So I'm a sentimental guy. So I'm having a moment. Thank you, Trish. I mean, we've done a lot of shows together. Thank you so much.
I'll be back for some one-offs. I just need to rebalance a little bit.
Absolutely.
It's crazy over here.
Tell our audience what you're doing. What are you doing with your life now?
Okay, so I recently moved from the city to Berkeley. It's a 10-minute walk to campus. I am one of the oldest people in most of my classes. I am older than many of my professors at this moment, which I think is really funny. They're like, but I'm still getting 28. Like, I must be drinking enough water. what I'm doing is I'm really taking the opportunity to dive into the campus. I'm taking the opportunity to see what's there. Like, I could probably put one of these shows on the radio station here at Cal. But there's a lot of, what I'm realizing now is Berkeley is a heavily weighted research school. And so I am diving into my own research. I have a couple of projects around codependency and some things that I want to dive into. And I'm building community with people who are old and like us, who have conversations,
I don't know who you speak for yourself.
Yeah, I know I am speaking for myself. So I go to class every day and I'm trying to really like build some information, like give myself the opportunity to actually step into this opportunity, as well as work on my own projects. One of the so I have currently Psychology 101, which is a research, I get to learn how to code research statistics. That is not going to be my favorite class. So that's a very heavy class. And then I have a transfer class this semester that they're making me take, so that I don't F up this whole first semester. And then a class that I'm really excited about is a man who's been doing research on happiness and oxytocin. And the first class was literally a incredibly brief overview of Buddhism, Taoist, and Hinduism. I was like, okay. And he had us do 4 embodied meditations in class. I was like, all right, I can get in with this.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah, I'm just taking the opportunity to simplify as much as I can until I feel the ground beneath me. Now, if you could see my room right now, that my room looks like my internal head process. It's wild. So
You've
that's
been here before and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You got this.
I just need a little focus. That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
One thing that's really wonderful about what Trish is doing that I want to really acknowledge, and it gives hope to how we are evolving. Trish will be the first member of her lineage to graduate from college. I think to even attend college, if I recall correctly.
At 37.
37. But that's really cool. First member of your entire family lineage to go to school and graduate. So that's powerful. That's powerful. And I think there's a lot of ancestors up in the spirit realm that are going, you go, girl, you go.
We're working on it.
Well, it won't. It's not the only first in her lineage, right? Am I right? There's more things that you have been first of in your lineage as well.
Oh yeah, like I am the black sheep in the family who has broken a lot of things. I am just going to keep going so that if I have children, but even the children that I get to raise in my lifetime have the impact of this. And I know that I'm at Berkeley for a reason. I wrote some really powerful essays about the impact that I do want to have, and a lot of it has to do with Scott and your teaching. There's 3 really powerful teachers in my life, and that would be you two, and Zuza Engler. And again, it's really like your loving support. Scott taught me how to be empathetic, and you taught me how to be me. And
I thought to myself, how to be a bitch. Did I teach you how to be?
I like the C word personally, but yes.
How to set boundaries.
But really, like I love that, Scott. You're so sweet.
I know. And Zuza taught me how to embody the world through Gestalt.
I think what's really beautiful for you to remember, if you will, is that you are actually blessing those who came before you and those who will come after you. So in your personal lineage with your family, your bloodline, that is part of how absolution works. We don't all get to correct ourselves and experience ourselves as whole in one lifetime. Sometimes it takes several generations, and that is how humans evolve, right? So you are a living, breathing expression of the evolution of your lineage.
I'm working on it every day.
Keep going.
Yes, I am still doing the self-love show. That happens to be in the morning that I don't have any class.
And everybody, please do join the Self-Love Show every Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Trish and her partner, Dawn. Who do you got tomorrow?
We are doing a rerun, but it's probably something that either Dawn or myself have taught on. So if you want to hear one of our teachings, go ahead, rock it out. And then we'll be back the following week. We both needed a break. I was like, I'm falling. She was like, okay. I was like, okay, I just need a break. She's like, you're surfing. I'm like, yes, I am.
Well, thank you, Trish. Everybody, Self-Love Show still. And Bridge, thank you so much for building the bridge in our
Always
own
a pleasure.
consciousness. And as we conclude every show, all things begin with our Alpha and Omega Man, also known as Omashar. So
before we get rid of that lineup, Bridge, you took the words right out of my mouth the whole time you were speaking. So thank you. It's like everything you said just rang true like a crystal. And Scott, I'm with you with the sentimentality about Trish. You know, we don't know each other very well, but we're acquainted in the heart very deeply. And I love you very much, Trish. And I'm really, if I was your dad, I'd be so proud of you. Rocking on. I'm not, I'm your brother. So I'm your brother who's really proud of you. And thank you. Thank you.
Brother, Dad, it's all the same. We're all in it together.
I know we are. So go forth and conquer. No, become more sovereign. Self-sovereign. So here we go. Let's do something and close this out with a couple of announcements afterwards. So we're going to go nice here. We're going to go here.
Please show me how to reach you. Strip me down. Let go my mind. I was naked and blind. Finding it harder holding on to what's gone. Then there's the future. What if we never get that far? I know it may sound crazy if I say not much is real. Tell me inside, how do you feel? This is the time to break the mold of the old and dysfunctional way we have lived our lives so far. How much longer can we hold on to that which tears us apart? So free up your mind, open your heart. No longer can we hold on to that which tears us apart. So free up your mind, open your heart. Finally free from self-disguise, I rise from the ashes of the me I used to know. You know that I am a dreamer, and I would like you to see that I am dreaming a new reality. Please show me how to reach you. Strip me down, let go my mind. I am naked and blind.
Thank you, beloved brother Omashar. You do such a beautiful, beautiful job. And that was quite a produced song. It started off, a little bit slow, and then we've got the guitar licks in there. We've got some chorus. We've got some harmonies.
I know it's a nice build. I like songs which build and they take on more and more substance as you go through it and end up with ta-da! So thank you for recognizing that.
Absolutely. It was beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. Just one announcement, actually two announcements. We have just added a special event tomorrow night. We're going to be doing a special live stream from the Haven in Ashland with the Twin Ray and Gary Malkin. And many of you have seen Gary Malkin on our show. He is on his way right now. He's going to get to where I'm staying with the Twin Ray tonight. And so tomorrow we are going to live stream out to everybody this special event. And it's going to be a satsang. Remember when we had a satsang with Kristen Hoffman about 6 weeks ago? Similar. There will be Gary going back and forth playing music and the Twin Ray providing beautiful wisdom. We'll start at 6:30 p.m. with our evening meditation and then go right into the satsang. So it's the same link, the same Zoom room we've been using every night at 6:30 p.m. for our meditation. And so please do join us. And Gary is a beautiful musical artist. And of course, the Twin Ray are incredibly wise. So please do join us tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. meditation, 7 o'clock satsang. And then Omashar and I will, are you going to be with us tomorrow, Omashar? Can you make that?
I am. I'm really looking forward to that. Just as I was coming on tonight, I saw the poster you put out and thought, yay, Twin Ray and Gary Malkin. Holy poly smoke, really.
It'll be powerful. And we'll probably have a little bit of time for an Omashar song. So
okay.
Be prepared. That'll probably work out just right. Then the other event, again, Omashar and I will be providing is this Saturday night. And it's a great theme, bridging heaven and earth with our body temples. And look at all the people that are going to be joining us. And these are all soul searchers. Tangela will be co-hosting. We love Tangela. And she's bringing a whole lot of her best luminaries, all talking on this theme. And we will then have a KES group healing experience. And that'll be, as we've been doing at the end of the show. And it's from Natalie, coming to us from Switzerland. So a little European influence. She's a master healer. So that's going to be our Saturday night show.
And also on Saturday, we have Peter Sterling, the amazing harpist from Sedona, I'm guessing, where he's kind of mainly hangs out. What
Yep.
an amazing musician he is, and presence.
Yeah, so Omashar and Peter Sterling, two great musical artists on Saturday night. So that's what we've got. And then we've got a whole lot planned for next month, but we'll let you know about that a little bit later on.
I'll just bring on Rev Bridge again just to say goodbye.
Absolutely.
Yay.
And is Trish still with us, or is she?
Trish has gone to campus.
She's off to campus. All right. Reverend
Thanks so much
Bridget-
for having me. It's always a pleasure. And I'm sending you all blessings and love.
Thank you.
Let's change our minds. Let's do it like it's a hobby, you know?
Absolutely.
for fun.
Mental
Change your mind.
transmutation. Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Reverend Bridge. Thank you, Roma Show. Thank you, everybody, for watching, including everybody watching on Facebook. Thank you, John and Summer Raymer, for getting us out to all those Facebook groups and pages. And we'll see you all hopefully tomorrow night for the live stream. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Yeah.